There
you
it
go.
is. Well, hello there, Pete and Rachael Wrue.
Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Hey, Rick.
Good, good. After our last interview, I had so many problems with my internet. We kept freezing and it kept interrupting us. And then we would ask questions, and our conversations, as usual with the Burros, went all over the map. And I just wanted to follow up with you guys because I don't feel like we got to really talk as much about the book as I wanted to. And so this is the book. Let's show it again. Let's put it up there. Can you see it well?
Yeah.
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 I think we got it too here. You can see it
Yes.
better through mine.
Sometimes explained. And
All
if we
right.
want to lock me out, we can also put up the return of Christ.
Oh, you rock.
It's a sister book. It's a
Yeah.
companion book.
It is, yeah. And like we talked about before, um, some of us think that it might be a good idea to start with End Times Explained because they can at least see their view being represented. And then also our view being represented. I say our because I'm a full preterist as well. And so we can see that. And then when you go to the Return of Christ, it's more, in depth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Which
would
is
agree
great.
with that. I know in our past discussion there. Yeah, I mean, I forget who said it. Was it Rick that said that our new book should be first? But
I
yeah, I
think
would
so.
totally agree. Yeah, absolutely 100% because it's representing all the views and we're actually kind of starting with a futurist view and kind of going into more of the past. So
Yeah.
taking it to full
It's
preterism.
just the way it worked out. We wrote the first book, and then someone suggested, we write the second book because they're not familiar with the different terms and what they mean, and it kind of worked out well because we didn't know Kirk Cameron before we wrote the new book, and we might not have been able to get him to write the foreword had we done it the other way around. So it
Right.
worked out, and that was really cool for us. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool for me too. I've wanted to get Kirk Cameron on our show. I've requested it through so many different avenues because I really want to hear his personal testimony, and I'm sure he's done it elsewhere, but it doesn't if it's not on the Burros.
I know. He's a really busy guy. We did
Of
ask
course.
him for you. He's just so super busy. He does have an autobiography, which we have, which is really cool. But no, I get it. It would be totally awesome if he would do your podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, I was a huge fan of Growing Pains, which was the show
Me
he did
too.
on.
Me too.
Yeah, and I loved it. Of course, I had a crush on Tracy Gold, so that
Oh, yeah, she's
the
adorable.
sister. I loved her
Yeah.
glasses and that. So let's talk about the book, guys. So much like your previous book, you've laid it out in a very simple format. You have charts and images, quote breakouts. I really like it. And one of the things that I liked, what I'm going to try to show everybody if I can see, I don't want to give away too much. Everybody, you need to buy the book, but like something just as simple as this, with each view, you kind of show those arrows and those positions and give a good explanation of, okay, so this is how they see it. And it helps. It helps me, especially in the Return of Christ. That really helped me. But so when we talked in the last time about this, I had asked you guys about, your journey, which was part of your testimony.
Mhm.
So let's just revisit it really quick because then I want to talk
Sure.
about the way these views broke down. Okay. So both of you were in dispensationalism.
Yes. I
Right.
started out with a Catholic background and I got born
Right.
again and I landed in dispensationalism. Yeah.
Right. So Rachael, whenever you left dispensationalism, the next level was what view eschatologically?
Rapture.
It was a step-by-step process. It started with
Right.
me studying the rapture. I was questioning the pre-trib rapture. I came to a post-trib view, and then it just, and a lot of this happened just from me reading the Bible on my own. No one came to me and said, "Hey, your view is wrong. It's this." I
Mhm.
studied the Bible for myself, and I wanted to see where they were coming up with these views and make sure everything's lining up with Scripture. The rapture wasn't making sense for me. Then I studying the millennium one day, that wasn't lining up for me. So then I studied that further, became an amillennialist, and then that led me down the path to preterism because many amillennialists are at least partial preterists, and that's where I started learning about all that. So it's just a step-by-step progression of learning and growing and learning the word. Like I think I said this in our previous interview the other day, like you don't become a Christian and automatically understand the Bible perfectly. We all have to learn and study and grow. And so it was a process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you guys said it was like over a 10-year period, right?
For yeah, we've been studying this over 10 years now. We actually a memory popped up for Peter on his Facebook today, and he said, had a great weekend. Well, we met Super Bowl Sunday of 2012, and that was February 5th. Today is February 6th. He posted that the day after we met.
So we've known each other for 12 years.
We've known each other for 12 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
He brought me over to watch the Super Bowl, but it was really to.
It was a setup. We talked about that on our first interview. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm glad it worked out. Do you guys remember who was playing in that Super Bowl?
No.
Some football teams.
Pay attention to the Super Bowl. We were talking to each other all night.
Yay, sports
and there was
team.
like some sort of halftime show, I think.
Yeah.
So what do you guys want our audience to know in regard to your book?
Well, this new book,
There's
I
a
guess,
lot.
yeah, there is quite a bit. But first and foremost, it was written to educate the church. Okay. It's to first show all the views, and then we're coming to find out as we're having conversations with people to also help people understand their current view, because I feel like a lot of people don't know their view.
Right.
For myself, like I was raised a Catholic. I actually knew more about Catholicism after I left it than I did when I was in it, because I started studying it more afterwards. But we find out with a lot of pastors and people we have conversations with, they don't even understand the premillennial dispensational view at all, remotely, especially when you get into Daniel and some other things. So I think this is helpful not only to educate the church on all the views and say, hey, look, there's other views out there. You know, there's a lot of indoctrination going on where they're just taught one view. And this is to say there's other views out there. And not only that, I think this will help everyone understand their current view. And also the biggest thing is why people believe these other views. We're kind of giving that why, you know, not just stating a view, but why would people and sincere Christians believe this view?
Yeah. And I would just also add to teach the church history, because I think that's not being taught in most churches. And a lot of Christians don't know that. I think most Christians just assume today that the view they're being taught and the view they hold, that's just what the church has always believed. And that's not correct. That's not what the church has historically believed. And we're just trying to open people's eyes to that. And like Pete said, just to educate people, just to be informative. That's all we're trying to do.
Because people don't know they've been indoctrinated, and
right.
You know, you got to give them a choice too. And also, you know, just arguing with people doesn't work very well. We want to have conversations, and we want to, you know, lovingly and, you know, and godly. And I just feel like this is a better way to approach it by showing all the views instead of like kind of fighting people and combating people. We can just lead them by the hand and just walk them through the views and say, like, you know, yeah, this is your view of dispensational, but hey, did you know there was like historic premillennialism? Did you know there's all these different ways to interpret Revelation? And, you know, a lot of these, you know, they might not be all correct, but some parts of them they're getting right. I mean, you know, some of these things, you know, are very.
And we hear that from a lot of people. Oh my gosh, most of my Christian life, I never knew there were other views. I only heard of this one view. And that's our whole point here. We're trying to show, look, guys, there's all these other views. I mean, our book, we've got 5 different views of the rapture, 5 different views of the millennium, 5 different views of Revelation, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, I don't think a lot of Christians are aware of it.
Yeah. And you know what? That's my experience. I just thought whatever we believed is what every church believed. And I was failing miserably at what I was doing. So that, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I was for the longest time. And then I remember I was introduced to the author A.W. Pink, and his work, it was called Studies on Saving Faith. And I remember reading that book, and it shocked my world, because I was like, what is he talking about? What? And then I would see the verses of scripture, and I'd be like, wait, I just read that just the other day. I didn't catch it. And you don't realize, because when we use the word indoctrination, it sounds very harsh and negative. Indoctrination is just the definition of somebody that only sees a single view. And so, right. It's not necessarily evil. It's just what you believe. It's just, that's the only view you see.
Right.
So rather than, you know, anytime you're indoctrinated, well, it sounds, yes, it's true, but don't be mean when you say it. But I remember reading that A.W. Pink book. I remember he had this one quote. He said, if if you are more concerned with saving yourself from hell, then you're committing the sin of self-preservation. And I was like, what? I didn't even know what to think of. It just got me to think differently. And then I started understanding like Calvinism. I didn't even know what that was. And then I was introduced to it, right? So that's kind of the way it was whenever I was introduced to the temple's destruction in 8070. I'd never heard it. Not
Right.
one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Us too.
And so that's what was really surprising. And the time statements, they were that was something that I saw, but those were the confusing things, because I would look at him and I'd be like, well, it certainly sounds like he's talking to the people in front of him, but I obviously don't know the Bible. These people do. I believe what you say. Moving on. And then we create that filter. So when we read the Bible, we read it with that preconceived filter. And we've got that. And I think it's J.I. Packer. He's got a great quote about that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
We
Yeah.
have that in our book.
It's
It's
in the
at
book.
the end of our book.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's exactly right. You know, it's amazing. I remember whenever Cherry and I were reading that one time, because it is true. That's the experience that we have as Christians. So that's one of the things that when I read your book, Return of Christ, I was like, I'd already been introduced to it because I read Glenn Hill's book. I was like halfway through it when I got your book. And then I started reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't see so much of this stuff. Like, and I had already learned a lot about full preterism, but there was a lot of things I still hadn't. And so it was a beautiful thing to me when I saw that End Times Explained come, because I was like, oh, now we can talk. Now we can talk about it. And that's one of the things we want to do at the Burros, guys, is that we want to be able to have a good conversation, godly conversation, and love one another. And you're not going to get that on Facebook easily.
No,
we
Noticed?
Oh yeah.
We do. We
that.
do.
Yes.
And it's tough because tones can be misread, and we hear all the time Facebook's not the best place to be having these conversations, but it's one of the only platforms we really have. And I hope people don't misunderstand our heart. Like, we're not mean-spirited people. We don't like to fight with people, as some have accused us of, but we're really sad when we see people being deceived. And if we believe truly that people are being deceived, we want to share what we believe is the truth and wake people up by any means necessary. Obviously, we want to do that in a loving way, but this is our struggle, you know?
Right.
And like that word indoctrination you said could sound kind of harsh. Deceived can sound kind of harsh as well.
It can.
Yeah, of course. And we don't mean that. Yeah, I mean, my gosh, like we can all be deceived. I mean, from the Easter Bunny to Santa Claus to like all these different things. I mean, on mass scale. I mean, you could. I mean, we're in this world. We're trying to figure things out, and yeah, we could, bite onto something that's not true and follow that for a while, and yeah, we can totally be deceived. And again, for Christianity, like she's saying, she used to always say, I don't know if you said it recently, but you become a Christian. Well, you don't automatically have a perfect understanding of the Bible, right? I go from Catholicism, I'm a Christian, boom, I land in a dispensational premillennialism. I'm trying to get closer to the truth, but I'm not aware that this dispensationalism is wrong or off or not biblical or whatever. But I'm trying to figure it out, and I trust other teachers that have been dispensationalists for 30, 40 years. And I'm like, well, they've obviously been doing this almost their whole life. They must know what's right. They got to be correct.
They're the experts.
But then, and so we do that self-study. We actually look at that scripture. And again, like you were saying, take off those goggles or, all those preconceived ideas and just look at the word, get in that language and just, really study it. Then you see, well, wait a minute, oh my gosh, this maybe isn't right. And you start questioning things. The problem is these days, I hate to say it, but like, unless it's good to question, we need to study, and that's awesome. But like with a lot of people and pastors, especially, if you study and don't come to the same conclusion they did, boy, it's like, don't study, or it's unfortunate. Like you have to agree with them. If you study and you find a different conclusion, it's just like, oh no. And then I feel like I'm in trouble for studying my Bible. Like, I mean, should I study it or shouldn't I study it? Because I'm coming to something different.
Sure. Yeah, that's the other thing about the book that End Times Explained that you guys do really well, is explaining that there's always that argument about what's literal and what's figurative. You know,
Yes.
what is literal and what's figurative? And I remember, you know, in the premillennial dispensational world, it felt like the things that were literal and the things that were figurative. Later on, I learned that it was almost like they were flip-flopped, you know, and it was so
Yeah.
strange. And so in your book, you guys, like, you know, idealism, it's a symbolic view, you know, like you explain that, where those names come from. And it's unfortunate, but those names like full preterism or idealism or historic premillennialism, whatever, they just show you which camp that you're in and where, what, you know, what level or what you've accepted, I guess.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's good. So what else? What else you want us to know about your book, guys? Is there anything else that you can think of?
Oh boy.
I think Rachel has a list of things she would like to
There's a
discuss.
lot. Like I
I would
said,
like to hear it all.
I can't remember like what we've already addressed or not addressed.
Just
Don't worry
What-
about it.
like I said, one thing is yeah, just for any of our friends who've already bought our first book, um, there's additional information in this book that's not in the first book, even on preterism. So we really try to make it different and include different facts, different quotes, different pictures, everything. So it's not a repeat. We want it to be completely different. Obviously, the explanation of preterism is there and some stuff's repeated, but yeah, all the quotes are different, except I think the only quote we repeated was the C.S. Lewis quote because it had to be in there.
It's powerful.
But yeah, a lot of different, we address things. We address the millennium. We address like the man of sin, 2 Thessalonians 2, stuff like that we didn't talk about in the first book. So I just want people to be aware there's new information here. So if you liked our first book, you're gonna like our second book.
So does
And
that mean
also-
you probably will revise that first book with a second edition?
I don't know.
No, we like it. We liked that it was simple and it was beginner level.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
say this, we actually did just do a new printing. We made a couple slight edits to some typos that we
Yes.
found, but otherwise it's still the same book.
Thicker cover on.
yeah.
But
There was a gentleman that gave us a review. So all of our reviews for our first book were really good on Amazon. We got all 5-star reviews except one man gave us a 4-star, even though he said the book was excellent and excellent intro to preterism and he would recommend it. He apparently didn't like that. He wished that we had addressed some additional things like the millennium and the preterist view of how is the world going to end,
Yeah.
or do you not think it's ever going to end, and things like that. And what about Satan and no more Satan? The world seems to be getting more evil. So we were, you know what we did? We made sure that we addressed all of that in the new book, and we did.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
Well, I know that. I mean, you can, and the way that you can do it in
There's
that
a
simple
lot.
approach, there is. I mean, look, Don Preston, what has he done? 750 episodes on the Olivet Discourse.
I
That's
think it
no
was
joke.
I think it
It's
was,
a lot.
Yeah, I think it was
Oh my gosh.
866 actually, because I think
yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
And he's not even done. If you watch
know.
occasionally, he'll throw one in like, here's one area that I didn't get.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
You can
my
go on forever.
goodness. You can. And the more you research and the more you study, the more that you unearth, you know, you start to see these things. So
Mhm.
what else? What other high point you want us to know?
Well, I just wanted to share, like, because I always told we had like Rose Guide, and I don't know if there's any Rose Guide lovers out there, but I mean, they have good pamphlets, this and that, but overall, it doesn't represent the views very well. And I wanted to have a book that represented all the views and explained the why, but also gave full preterism a seat at the table, because I have commentary after commentary in the library that doesn't even address full preterism. They just, because they say it's heresy, and they'll address partial preterism and that's it. And then they'll obviously pick it apart because it's not as consistent. And, you know, I just wanted to have a book that gives actually full preterism a seat at the table here, because I think it's time, and it's, you know, well overdue, and it's the most consistent view. And I hope people comes across and people really see that.
Yeah. Just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, because people have questioned us, well, like, isn't it hard to write a book like this and remain unbiased? And we feel like somebody like us who's been through this whole process, who's studied all the views and at one point or another held a lot of these views and we've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other. It's somebody like us who should be writing a book like this, because a dispensationalist can't write a book like this and give a fair treatment to preterism and all these other views. We've read their books. They're very biased. They don't properly represent the views. And someone asked, I think it was one of your coworkers that asked you, well, was it hard to write a book and like this and remain unbiased? And Peter's like, well, no, because we've actually held a lot of these views at one point or another. We've thoroughly studied all the views. And I always say, what was difficult about writing this book is all the variations within each view. Each view is hard to pin down because not all dispensationalists agree on every interpretation of scripture, nor do all preterists. So it's like we had to be real careful with the way we worded things. And while some think this, others think this. This is a popular view, but some interpret it this way within each view. So you can't nail down any one person. It's very, very difficult. And I think we did pretty well at it, but it was hard.
So. I mean, I know like on the full preterist side, you can't really go into all the IB. I mean, you did mention IBB and CBB as being different.
Yes.
So you at least mentioned that, which I thought was good.
Yeah, we just want to make people aware of it, but our goal wasn't to go into so much detail about it. This was just, again, to give an overview and just educate people about all these different possible interpretations and views within the views.
And again,
addressing things that weren't in our first book.
And doing the best we possibly could just to be as unbiased as possible.
And to be fair.
And, I know since we had the book out, actually, some other futurists have come out and said, well, you're not being 100% unbiased, and someone gave an example of a page of our book that we had posted and said, well, you have, 2 paragraphs for futurism, but 3 for, the other views. And I was like, well, we did that because, everyone knows the current view.
They know the mainstream.
That's why there's 2
We're trying to
paragraphs
show all the other sides.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And so we show we have a paragraph and then we have a proponent that believes that in the futurist view. And then we have, other people believe this, and here's a quote from a proponent, but we felt the need to explain it further because people won't be familiar with the view. So we need to explain the why someone would believe that. And I think because of that, people think we're biased, but we really tried our absolute best to be as unbiased as possible. Like we try to keep reading it and looking at it from an outside perspective, and just, trying to give it unbiased. And we are trying to show that other views. So sometimes I know people think that maybe we are being a little biased, but like we're trying not to. We just felt the need to explain it more because it's new. Like the church and the people we talk to have no idea about the other side of things.
We try to go back and forth. Again, we're trying to show the other side that most Christians aren't hearing. And like we said, to give that full education. And I would actually say we actually erred on the side of caution. I felt we were like the chapter we've gotten some criticism on from a couple of futurists. Was that whole chapter of the evolution of eschatology. Yeah. And that one was a really tough chapter. It took us months to write and a lot of research. I was going to say, I feel we were pretty generous because we could have gone into a lot more detail on certain topics like Israel and what really happened with the formation of Israel and the brutality that occurred with all of that. And even with John Darby and Schofield, there's a lot of more detail we could have gone into about their personal lives and their character, but we didn't want it to seem like we were intentionally trying to assassinate their character and make it seem like we were trying to take a side. So we kind of held back a little bit. We tried to just give the facts, give the overview, and show you all the different sides. We tried our best.
And I can appreciate the fact that it's a little bit biased on this view because, like you said, it is new and we're not being really represented anywhere else. So we're representing us, but also being careful about what people are thinking. And that's a brilliant strategy. I think it's a good, especially for introduction. And then it'll actually send them on the route that, in their study. And like you said, understand your own, like I did too. Like I remember reading, I was like, wait a minute, I did believe that. That's true. Pardon me. So, here's a side of it that I was curious about because of you guys have went in through each view. I consider dispensationalists my brothers and sisters. So do you. I know you do.
Yes, we do.
Because I have to be honest. I remember when I was talking to Daniel Hummel, he wrote The Rise and Fall of Dispensationalism. And
Yes.
Daniel said,
Yeah.
let's just keep in mind that the dispensational churches are the ones that have been out ministering to the world. So, and that's true. They've spread the gospel really far. And so people have come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ through this without even necessarily being trained in the totality of the eschatological view. That just it seems to come later in our Christian walk. But as you guys would go from one view to the next, tell me what that was like for you, because if somebody's reading this book and they see their like a view like they did hold, I want to use Sarita as an example. She's not here to speak for herself, but she's said this on the podcast enough. She left premillennial dispensationalism and she's went into this other view, this last trumpet view. And she's like, I'm not a dispensationalist anymore.
Right.
And I watched her struggle with that, having to have these conversations with her family who are worried, like, where are you heading? You're not going to be like Rick and those goofs over there, are you? Like that kind of stuff. And all joking, we love each other. I love her husband, Mike, and all them. They're wonderful people. So, but when you made that conscious decision, because I remember when I made mine, but you guys went to each, like, I didn't even go to all these other views. I went from like dispensationalism straight into partial preterism, straight into
you made the big jump.
It was it made the most sense to me. But then I was like, well, but the church didn't really teach this. So that's what made me stop and slow way down, because I held on to partial preterism for a long time, but I kept seeing inconsistencies and it was driving me bananas. And then I kept having to like redefine words and make things, and I was like, I don't want to keep redefining words. I've been doing this for so long. I don't want to do it anymore. So then I finally came to some conclusions. I was reading, of course, the Don Preston book, and then watching David Curtis, and then it just like all of it kind of hit at once, and I was like, this is what I believe. This is what I believe. But to go from like, like you said, you studied the rapture, and then you went to this post-mill rapture. When you made that decision, that conscious decision, can you describe what that's like? I mean, I know, okay, so it's different in the dynamic of the marriage, but what about to your church and to the other people? What was that like for you? Was it isolating, or was it exhilarating, or both?
Yeah, I want to just say, because like when we first, she was first studying this out, we were first kind of come into that, from a pre-mill to post-mill, or sorry, on the rapture, pre-trib to post-trib rapture. Our first conversation at the time, we were going to a Calvary Chapel, and she just asked the question and was questioning about this. And the pastor's first sentence, I'll never forget this as long as I live, he said, well, if that's what you want to believe, maybe you should fellowship somewhere else. Like, that's how the conversation started. So then we're like, okay, this is, the church apparently doesn't like this at all, remotely. And whenever we were talking about it, it was kind of like you're pulled into the corner and, we don't want to pollute the church. So let's have this conversation more in private. But do you want to take it from there?
I guess the big thing I would say, and I think this is what Rick is getting at, is it's not easy. It was not an easy process. I mean, and I feel like sometimes we need to remember that, because we've come so far in our studies, we forget what it's like to be on the other side and have the different mentality, and it's challenging. No one likes to have their beliefs challenged. And I just want people to understand it wasn't easy for Peter and I. It's not like we became preterists overnight. We wrestled with this. This was a long, grueling process of studying and having our beliefs challenged and being like, wait, you're telling me what I was taught was wrong? Yeah. That's hard for anybody. And especially for somebody who's maybe been a Christian their whole lives. Like Peter and I were not Christians as children.
That they love. If they're taught by somebody they love dearly, like their family or
their parents.
Of their parents, or a pastor that's been in their church for 50 years. He is the man that has led everybody in your family to the Lord. He's done every baptism. He's been there every time that somebody's been sick or died or whatever. He's performed all of these things for the family. And you don't want to believe that somebody that you love so dearly could be wrong. And then, so are you saying you're misleading everybody? And it's like, it's really not that easy. Like it's not like that. Sometimes we have these filters, and a pastor, for example, a lot of pastors, they're busy being pastors, and they're trying to study the word, but when you've got 300 people
Yeah.
I mean, I have a shop with 40 people and it takes up so much of my time and I'm not even worried about their family life. I mean, I
Yeah,
am, I'm not, can you imagine being an
right.
administrator of a church, but then also having to be concerned
Yeah,
with all of these people's personal lives? That's a lot. And
yeah.
so they may not be able to shape, of course, if they're doing their studies, which most pastors I would say do, but a lot of times I forget the word that we used in our last episode, but where they just, because they believe it, they just keep driving home that same view and just pushing it all into their same view. But that's a hard move whenever it's people that you love that are
Yep.
are looking at you like, now what
Yep.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I explained like first with that first pastor there, that was kind of the church side of that. But like we were dating at the time and she was challenging and poking holes into my pre-trib rapture here. And I was like, wow. And there were nights I was driving home, from her apartment and I was kind of mad. I was like, you mean to tell me all my books that I've been buying, all these commentaries are wrong? And she's just sitting there poking the holes through it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's something to this and need to study. So, and I think we fought a little bit about it as well.
And I didn't realize I was naive to it because I was a new Christian and I didn't realize how sensitive people were about this and how you're challenging people's long held beliefs. He was a Christian for like almost 10 years longer than I was studying all this stuff. And I come along and I'm going, I don't think this is right, Pete. And I didn't realize how much that challenged him.
Tim LaHaye can't
It
be
was a
wrong.
learning curve for both of us,
Yeah, Chuck Smith, Tim LaHaye, they can't be wrong. There's just no
But
way. It's like J. Vernon McGee. Are you kidding me?
sorry, go ahead, Rick.
Gary Jenkins and Tim LaHaye, I'm in the Left Behind series.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I absorbed the whole thing.
I know, right?
Absorbed it all, and I was like, this is how it's going to be, and that's and all of my friends, we would go and have cookouts or dinners.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the books and we talk about what's going on and we look at our lives and we look at our current
Mm-hmm.
events. And, we talk about all that and we share that in these relationships. And then when suddenly you do begin to see a different view, I'll never forget, like I said, when I saw the Studies in Saving Faith by W. Pink, it shifted my view so drastically that I started seeking out a church that was more about the sovereignty of God and rather than the free will of man. I was more interested in that side of it because I was hungry for it. I just wanted to see it. And and I found a Reformed Baptist church in my area. And so I started going there and it was like all of a sudden I'm hearing these sermons that are exactly like what I'm reading in the Bible. And I'm like, oh wow, and I know that there's ways to argue both sides of the view. I'm not, I'm not dumb, but I hadn't heard that other side preached.
Mm-hmm.
And that was unique,
Yeah, and it fed you, I bet you. Yeah, of course.
But then all my friends started challenging me, guys.
Yeah.
My friends started challenging me like, oh,
Yes.
really? Well, then how about, and they start bringing up the verses,
Oh,
now
yeah.
my new position. I'm like, I don't want to defend my new position right now. I just want to bask in this for a minute. I just want to live.
Yeah, and it's hard when you're first new to it. And I know a lot of people, especially when they first change their view or become a preterist, they're not openly willing to discuss it because they don't feel equipped enough to defend what they believe. They're getting it, they're seeing it, but they don't know how to like explain it on their own from the scriptures. And I hate to say this, and I think I said this in our other interview. It's another thing I want to jump in with is I would never accuse any pastor of intentionally deceiving people or anything like that. I believe pastors are sincere and they are teaching what they sincerely believe to be the truth. So I want that to be clear. But I just want Christians to be aware. I get it. It's hard. It is hard work to study the Bible and you have to do some extra digging to go deeper. But Christians are just so trusting of what they're hearing from the pulpit, and they say, look, this guy's an expert, he's been to seminary, he's done the work, I'm just going to listen to him and I'm good. I've seen that not to be the case. We've had plenty of conversations over the years with local pastors, and we found just through our own personal studies, we know more on this topic than some of the pastors. And we hear sermons where pastors are confusing postmillennialism with preterism or preterism with historicism. And it's like, have you really not done your homework? And what are you learning in seminary? And I mean no disrespect, but I just want to give, if I can, one example just to show people. Because I hear pastors say, I've heard pastors say, hey, don't take my word for it. Check it out for yourself. Study for yourself. And I'm like, is that like, do they mean that? Or is it like a reverse psychology thing? I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I started studying the rapture and was getting real deep into that, I found a video online from Joseph Prince. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
He's a big
Yeah.
TBN TV preacher, and it was on the rapture. And he was trying to refute this idea that the rapture's new, the pre-trib rapture didn't exist before the 1800s. So he tries to quote someone as an example. So he quotes Matthew Henry.
Oh.
Oops.
Okay, Matthew Henry. I was like, what? Matthew Henry did not believe in a pre-trib rapture. What he did is he showed one or two sentences totally taken out of context from his commentary on 1 Thessalonians 4. And he shows that Matthew Henry used the word rapture. So I dove deep. I looked into it. We have some Matthew Henry commentaries, but he's got more than one, and I couldn't find it in ours, but I found it online, found the commentary he was referencing, read the whole thing in context, just for my own self. When you read it in full context, yes, he used the word rapture, but it's very clear that he was equating the rapture with the second coming. He did not believe in a pre-trib rapture the way Joseph Prince does. So
Right.
he's trying to quote this gentleman and say, well, look, the people believed in the rapture before the 1800s, and it was completely false, completely deceptive. But no one in that audience hearing that is going to know that. And if they don't take the time to look it up for themselves, they're going to believe what this pastor's telling them. That's just one example of many that I've come across.
Yeah. Well, you know as well as I do, especially in the full preterist camp, that that's not our nature. We are the ones that we're like Bereans. We'll go
look it
check
up.
it out. We'll check it out. That's our nature. That's what we do.
Yes.
And some other people don't. And we've had that conversation many times in the Burros about this, about there are times in my life where I've even felt like I just want to live the Christian life. I don't want to have to explain it, but the Christian life is explaining it, because Paul tells us that we need to be explaining it, right? We need to be ready to defend the faith. Paul, Peter, to give an answer. And that's what happens when, whenever I would ask questions, when I would come across things like this generation shall not pass until all these things take place. It was easy for me to change this generation to that generation because I'd been hearing it for so long, how easy that was.
Right.
Or to see that the difference between Genos and Genea, right? And how quickly and easily that snuck past me because I don't know Greek, or having conversations with men like Sam Frost and asking, particular questions, and him saying, you don't understand the way that the Greek, you have to be able to formulate the sentence. You have to, and I'm like, I got so frustrated at different times because I would be like, well, I would really like somebody to make a Bible that says it like the Greek really says it, then, because they do all these word for word translations. And if you're excuse me, if you're telling me that these word for word translations don't work, then please, somebody make the effort and write it like they meant it then, so that I can understand it better. Yeah. So we rely on other people that know the languages. I've got a strong concordance, but I've learned really quickly that that's helpful, but it's not really the end all. There's still some issues with that.
Even the Strong's Concordance is biased, but sorry, go ahead.
You're right. It absolutely
is. We've found things in there that's like, what? Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's hard not to be. Whenever
it is. Everyone's biased. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And we had to consciously try not to be. But go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. That's all I really wanted to say is that that frustration that you feel whenever you're changing from view to view, which is what this is what started this part of the conversation, was that frustration of I don't know the languages. And so a lot of times when you hear a pastor behind a pulpit say the Greek word is agape, and this is what the word means, and so whenever Jesus is saying this, he's saying it in this fashion, that we just go, okay, that's great, and it's beautiful. And then I remember that's the word agape. I remember that, oh, well, this one's phileo. Oh, okay, cool. So you learn that. Well, how many Greek words do I have to memorize here? I want, did the English version really convey what I'm, and am I developing a view based off of an incorrect way that the English is telling me something? Do you know what
Right.
I'm saying? Did you ever come across that in your study? Like you would read a word and you were like, the ESV says this, but the KJV says this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you hear that because they say, well, this word in the Greek could be translated several different ways in the English. And it's like, well, how do we know which way is the right one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so people like Gary DeMar and Don Preston and all them, that's what I love about it is they'll, excuse me, like Gary DeMar especially, he'll say, this word is used 15 times in the New Testament, and every time it means this. I
Yeah.
don't know why they translate it like this. This doesn't make any sense. It should mean the same way it meant in these other places.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But then again, I'm having to rely on Gary DeMar
Yeah, I know, right?
Exactly.
because I don't have the 15 verses I know what he's talking about. So I'm going to
Great
have to do
point.
this long word search. So at some
Yeah.
level, we're all sort of depending on other people too. So
That's
now I
right.
completely depend on you only with End Times Explained.
Yeah.
And I always say, because people like look at us, sometimes I feel like, do some of our fellow Christians think like we're the only ones that believe this? You think we came up with, because we get the, well, you don't have a theology degree, you're not a pastor. And it's like, but there's plenty of people who do have theological degrees and who are pastors who believe just like we do. I'm like, where do you think we learned it from? We didn't come up with it ourselves,
Right. That's
you know?
right. But we did see, that's why I think that's what triggered us is that we did see the verses, especially the time texts. And
Yes.
that's what frustrates a lot of people. I noticed especially a lot of like the millennials that I've spoke with, but they just the time text because they mean so much to us. And they're like, guys, just look what it says. Shortly. I mean, this is Revelation 1, man. It's saying soon and shortly and now, that's got to mean something. It's got to. But they're like, that's it did mean something for them, but it means something now. And I'm like, but those churches aren't even here anymore. Like, what do you mean? Like, those were things that I did know.
Yep.
So I already know. So then whenever I heard somebody else say those things, then I was like, it was like a breath of fresh air, man. I was like,
Yeah.
you mean we can take the time text for what they are,
If I could, you just remind me of something, if this is okay. I a while back, years back, was having a friendly back and forth with a dispensational friend of mine, and it was after I had become an amillennialist and I wasn't yet even a preterist. And she challenged me on that. And she goes, "Well, who was the book of Revelation written to?" Because see, and you'll hear this from futurists because they want to say the tribulation and all that. That's for Israel. And now it's obviously as preterist, I'm like, yeah, it was for Israel, but it was for Israel in the first century. But she asked me, well, who was Book of Revelation written to? And I'm like, well, the 7 churches in Asia. And she's like, exactly. But then now I'm looking at it, I'm like, and she used to emphasize audience relevance to me. And now I'm like, yeah, you get it, but you don't get it. It was for the 7 churches in Asia, but it was for them at that time, those actual people. How are you still putting it in the future when these churches don't, like you just said, they don't even exist anymore? It's like they see it, but they miss it. You know?
Matter of
If that
fact, I
makes
learned that
sense.
one of the churches that's when they give it the late date, I think it was Dr. Kenneth Gentry who said in the late date, if it was 8096, that one of the churches that were written to didn't even exist at that point.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, well,
Yeah.
that's external evidence that kind of points to an early date, that's all fascinating to me. I mean, we talked about Irenaeus, thought Jesus was 50 years old,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But we're
So
relying on him to give us the date of Revelation,
of
or
course,
so many people are.
yeah, but I don't want to negate all the
You're
amazing work that
amazed.
he did.
Mhm.
He's
Right.
relying on
That's
sources
true.
just like we're relying on sources.
Mhm.
Of course,
That's
he was
true.
talking to Polycarp. That's pretty cool. That's only one step from John, so that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
not so much for us. We're so far removed. But at the same time, the more that you study, and if you do use this book, I think End Times Explained is a great primer to work your way towards understanding the return of Christ. Why are we still waiting? It is a good primer. I think it definitely gives you a fair and balanced view with a little bit of bias at the end, and then you can go straight into the full-on bias of the return of Christ and really get the
There
view.
you go.
The more that you want to know, then you can give the other study aids or the references that you had. I think it's a beautiful setup as far as giving somebody the opportunity to see it, and then tell people that get this book, that the experience when you came to this final view, you said you landed on an island. You know, you kind of like worked yourself into an island. So what are you guys doing now? You're writing a book, but how about, let's just talk about your daily life. You're on an island. What do you do?
Cry for help.
Same.
SOS.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it hasn't, like, it's come with a price here. Because we feel like,
It comes with the territory, right?
you study,
Putting yourself out there.
yeah, you study,
Go ahead.
and you come to this view, and this view is not accepted. I just explained earlier, I mean, put this in perspective, talks about a, pre-trib rapture to a post-trib rapture, and we got flack for that. That's nothing compared. I mean, that's just a tiny piece of the puzzle and the millennium, and now we're like just, 80, 70, which it's not being taught in the church at all, so people are oblivious of that. But, this is much, much bigger. So, I mean, you think of just being kind of taken aside just over the rapture. We're out in the middle of nowhere right now, because people, it's such a leap. And the leap that you took, Rick, is wonderful. I mean, that you took the leap that we all wish people could take, because, I mean, with this book, like, we're literally taking people down, step by step. And we took a leap, at least on millennialism, and then, for her, full preterism. But, like, we have to be aware too that when we're talking to people, we can't make that jump all the way over there. I mean, we wish we could get everyone to do what you did, because that gets them, close to the edge, and then when you just push them off the cliff and the full preterism.
It's the same. It's the same here. You're right. We do have to be careful about that. I would, and I think I mentioned this in the last episode as well, but there was a moment when I think Gary DeMar, Rob Cruikshank had shared it with Gary DeMar. I think we talked about this, the how to refute preterism, and it was a pastor from Hope Baptist Church, and you can see in his attitude, he's obviously biased on his side, and he says this one thing. He goes, "These guys just believe it's all done." He said that the rapture's over. He said, "Anybody reading the Bible where it said the rapture was over?" I never did. I was like, "Well, why would you?" Because it doesn't even, no one's written anything. If you think your future view, then nothing's been written after that view either. So why would they say that? But
every point, yeah.
But this one thing that he said, I remember I wanted to just jump. It wasn't anger. It was like pain. Like, I hurt for this person, because he said, "Have you guys seen the sun go dark? Have you seen the moon turn to blood? Have you seen the stars fall from the heavens?" He said, "You haven't, had you?" He said, "So it's garbage." And I was like, I know that you read your Bible, and I know that you've read this, and you haven't put two and two together, and you're feeling, you as a pastor are trying to protect your people because you don't want them to fall by the wayside, but you don't see the truth of what those words actually mean. And that was heartbreaking, because I thought, I know that feeling. Like, I understand. I can see it. I know a lot of pastors, and I can see that this is their flock, and they take it seriously. And so they're doing what they can to try to steer them away from the problem things. And they were just doing a question and answer, which was rare, I think, in a Baptist church that I've seen, in my own experience, for him to answer that kind of a question. But I think that for me, when Jeff McCormick did his Sun Will Be Darkened series, that was a major shift for me, because I was like, because whenever somebody said, "Do you realize if one star fell, that the earth would fall into the star?"
Correct.
Yes.
And Andy would say that on our show, and it's like, oh yeah, so it's not literal. So it does mean something else. And then to go into the Old Testament. So I just urge anybody that wants to study this to go to endtimesexplained.com and pick up this book, End Times Explained, Understanding the Different Views. Yeah. It's got this really cool foreword by Kirk. What were you going to say?
Sorry, I just want to clarify, it's endtimes-explained.com. We had to put a hyphen in there because there's actually already another website.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Endtimesexplained.com. So you go to the wrong website if you don't have the hyphen in there.
If you don't put a dash in there, you're buying the wrong book.
That's
End
right.
times dash explained. End times
And
dash
times
explained.
dash explain.com.
Yes.
.com. You can also get it on Amazon, correct? You can search your
That's,
notes on
that's
Amazon.
correct.
Yep.
That is Pete and Rachael Wrue, Wrue.
Mhm.
And this, do some homework, guys. Go out and get this book. Get the End Times Explained first. I would say get it first and
Mhm.
see your
Absolutely.
view. See if your view is represented well. See if you understand it well. Cross-reference it to the scriptures. They give you lots of other reading material in the reference guide where you can go look at other books if you want. And then once you've done that, then if you're interested in the view of full preterism, then get the Return of Christ. Why are we still waiting? And you can get it on that same website or on Amazon. And I'm going to be, yep, the Burros are opening a store on our website now. We
Cool.
got enough requests for gear. Oh, show the guys your gear. Check that.
Yes.
You're the only two in the
I
world.
don't
You can see it. You're the
Same
only
one.
two in the world that have that hoodie, just so you know.
know.
Right.
But yeah,
Wear the hoodies again.
that's right. That's
We
awesome.
never took them off since the last time. They're like the best,
I'm
most
just glad
comfortable.
because you
And it's
guys wore
cold
the
in
other.
Rochester.
Yeah, it is. And you guys used to wear the black ones a lot. So now you got a couple that you can choose from.
Yeah,
That's right.
I love hoodies, Rick. It's actually all I wear. So
Oh man. So every time I get one, I'll have to be sure to send it to you guys.
There you go.
okay.
Yeah. But on the store, if it's okay with you guys, I would
Mhm.
like to put your books on our store as well.
We'd love that. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And here's a really cool thing. I don't know if I told you this or not. So I'm going to be starting a class.
Oh.
So I purchased 25 of your books
Mhm.
and I'm starting a class, and some people at my church are going to be meeting with us at the church, and we're going to be going through End Times Explained together.
Awesome.
Wow.
That is so
That's
great.
amazing. I'm honored. Thank you.
Yes,
Yep.
thank
Wow.
you so much. My
Well,
God.
I
Yep,
hope
we
it
are.
helps everyone.
And
Yeah, and I think that it will, because whenever I'll share this experience with you real quick too. So, I met with a local pastor here where I went to his church about 20 years ago, and I don't want to say his name until I talk to him and get his permission to say it, because I don't want to do that. But I just want to tell you the experience that we had. So I called him up one day and I said, "Listen, you always were a mentor for me, and my views have changed dramatically, and I would like to come and share this with you fully. I want to tell you exactly what I think, and I want to hear what you have to say." And he said, "Sure, come on over." So I went over and I sat down and I shared with him my entire eschatological view, which has changed my worldview and everything. And I wasn't nervous. I was expecting him to be kind, because he's a kind, sweet man. But what I wasn't expecting was him saying, "I'm right there with you, except for one thing." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "The great white throne judgment. This, there's something, this has to end in some fashion. I can't understand it. I know all these things are tied together, but my mind will not allow me to do this." This is a man that's been a pastor for over 40 years, and he studied the Bible tremendously. He's one of the few people that I know that I feel like he could recite the whole Bible to me, you know? So I said, "Well, would you allow me to share a book with you?" And he said, "Yes." And so I gave him Glenn Hill's book and I gave him your book, The Return of Christ. So he had those. So he gives me a call on Sunday. Okay. My wife and I were sick and we weren't able to go to church. And so we were home, and they called to check on us, which isn't that sweet? That's so nice when they do that. And he asked me the question. He said, "Do you know a man by the name of John Bray?"
Oh.
And I said, "Yeah, I've got his book, Matthew 24 Fulfilled." And he goes, "I have that book. I'm reading it right now." And he goes, "This guy's a full preterist." I didn't even use the term, but he said it. And I was like, this is awesome. He told me, "You invite all of your friends. They are welcome here. You invite them all." That's powerful. So we've got a group of about 8 down here where I live, and we have a church to go to. And
That's amazing.
it is. And so when I mentioned this book, I'm going to show it in the screen again. When I mentioned this book to him and I said, "I want to teach this," but all I'm doing is just reciting what's in the book. I'm not really teaching. Like, I'm just going to use the book and give them each a copy for them to take home so that they can use and study it on their own. And I said, "This will give you a fair and balanced view but then also present our view, the view that I have. And then maybe they can see where, at least where I'm coming from, because they're sweet and they know I believe something a little different, but they're loving on me anyway. So that's a beautiful thing. And so I'm excited.
That is
Your book will be a
amazing
part of that.
news. Thank you. Thank you.
That's great.
And we've hoped actually, like, I wanted to go door to door to all the churches around here and show this book in the hopes that people would use it in a classroom situation.
Or
as
maybe
well,
they'll
because-
sell it in their bookstores or
Yeah,
something.
as
We
a
gotta try to
reference
get
book.
it out there, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm sorry,
No,
go ahead, sweetheart.
No, I'm so that hearing your story, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, it's like music to my ears, and it's a beautiful story. I mean, like, this is the kind of the purpose of the book, and it's just so awesome that you're able to share your view, and it was accepted, and he was able to invite you in, and he was able to
Yeah.
see that other side. Um, Gosh, I mean, I wish that
Yeah,
would
he
happen every time we share it.
He did. He understood that the view by the Orthodox Church that it's unorthodox and that it would be considered heretical. That word sounds very ugly. It's another one of those words. Heresy sounds terrible, but it just means that it's not the accepted view, of a particular view. And I like to
Right.
say it this way: if you're a free will church versus Calvinist church, then one of you guys are being heretical towards one another's view. You're not trying to be mean, but it's just not the accepted view of your particular church. So this eschatological view is not an accepted one. And he knew that. And he knew that I said, we can't talk openly. That's the part that bugs me. I just want to be able to say the things that I'm reading in the Bible. You tell me to read my Bible and to share this. And so here I am. Can I do that? Please. And a lot of churches will not let you. That's fine. You can come here, but I don't want you to talk about what you think.
That's right.
This
That's
does not
right.
feel good. It doesn't feel like a fellowship,
That's right.
but we're starved for fellowship. So when he said that and he was like, look, you just come and you be you and you don't feel like you got to be quiet. You say these things and, we'll talk it through, but we love you. I was like, man, yeah,
I feel like that's rare,
it's
but
very,
that's awesome.
and he's a very rare man. I'm very, very fortunate to have him as my pastor.
Yes.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
You were going to say something?
Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay.
Wasn't important.
Well, I think we're about to wrap up. Is there anything else that you guys want to share or anything whatsoever? I think we covered it.
I think
we covered a lot. That was awesome. Thank you for interviewing us again.
Yeah.
Thanks for your
Well,
time.
thanks for that. I just, like I said, our technology over at Giraffe Studio is awesome on the audio side, but when you start getting into the internet and the video, it gets weird. We were freezing up. I didn't hear half the things you said. And I was like, man, and then we were doing that conversational podcast and everybody wants to pipe in and talk about it. And so it was basically a video of me not talking, staring, looking at everybody else, and then you guys getting to say something occasionally. That's not what I wanted. I wanted people to hear from you about your work, which I think is tremendous.
Appreciate that. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Really appreciate that. We appreciate the Burros and everything you guys are doing, and you guys are such a blessing in your ministry and everything, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks so much. We've got a lot coming on this year. We've added some new people. The Burros has actually grown. It's bigger than just the studio locally. I mean, we've got people across the country that are helping and contributing, and it's pretty cool. This year we're doing worship music. We're going to have a man by the name of Jim Beaver. He's going to come in once a month, and he's going to pick a hymn. He's going to go into the history of the hymn, the writer of the hymn, and then they're going to do, him and his band are going to do a new version of the song, like an updated, more, it's going to be cool.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Cool.
Yep. So we're just adding little bits and pieces here and there. But so I would like to carry your book on the new store. The new store is going to be launching in March.
Okay.
If it's okay
Awesome.
with you, I want to put that on there.
Sure.
100%, yeah.
So maybe we'll get a little bit of a flow coming through the website there too.
That'd be great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate the
And I will
opportunity.
follow up with you guys about this after I do the class. Maybe we'll have a little talk again and we can talk about what that experience was like.
That would be
Sure.
amazing. We would love to hear that. We would love to hear
Yeah.
how it went and how it was received and how it went. Yeah, it would be awesome.
Yeah. And then I give you some feedback on what the students are asking and what the students are saying.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
So, and then you guys can go ahead and start working on your children's pop-up book next year. Or preterism for toddlers. Something.
You open it up, it'll be
children's
just like
book.
a temple on fire. There you go. This is what you need to know, kids. This is the
Yeah.
pivotal point.
My goodness. You know, here in the next month, Palm Sunday's coming up, you know, Palm Sunday, Easter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I'm doing some studies on you know, on what actually happened on Palm Sunday. And
Mhm.
even in Palm Sunday, when he's riding down the Mount of Olives and he weeps over Jerusalem, what he says, like in the Gospel of Luke, in regard to what's about to take place in that city.
Yeah.
How in the world did I miss it?
Oh, I know.
How did I miss it? You know?
Mm, right.
Isn't that, I think, on the cover of Ed Stevens' book, actually, isn't it?
He's got,
Is
is it Luke 19?
Luke 19 he had on the cover?
About
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
going to be surrounded by your enemies
Yeah.
and all that. Yeah, we've missed so
Happened in
many
87,
things. It's like, again, like you were saying earlier, you read the Bible through a certain lens, and we miss so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. You skip
It's like,
things.
yeah, it's like, did it mean something? You know,
Yeah.
did it mean something? Like you read in the Gospel of John,
Mhm,
it says that there's a
mhm.
whole multitude of people around him that are shouting and praising. And so interesting because Jesus in Luke chapter 19, where that's taking place,
Mhm.
he says, it says the whole disciples are saying, blessed is the king, peace in heaven. I'd never even noticed peace in heaven. It says peace in heaven. And I'm like, well, that's got to mean something, you know? And
Yeah.
then you go to John and you find out that the reason why all of them are there is because he resurrected Lazarus.
Yeah.
And then you find out that Lazarus isn't mentioned in any of the synoptic gospels.
I
And then you
know.
find out that high priest isn't mentioned in all these. And I'm like, wait a minute. So did you know that? Like
Yeah.
Annas is only mentioned in John.
Mhm. Yeah. A friend gave me a book. I forget what it was called. The other disciple
who loved Jesus,
the disciple who loved Jesus. I think it's in there. Yeah.
Yeah. The disciple who loved Jesus. Yeah. And I have a very different view on who I think that is, which is,
Yeah. Okay.
you know,
Okay.
and I've done plenty of studies and I won't get into that, but I think that that's the beauty. Like another thing will happen whenever you start studying your different views, you
Mhm.
really start focusing in a little bit more on what those verses are actually saying. It
Mhm.
breaks that lens down. And so you pick up other things that aren't even eschatological. It's just other things, you know?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Connects a lot of
Exactly.
dots.
It affects so many things. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. Like in John, and then we'll cut it off. Sorry. I get excited about this. I love to talk about this stuff. Obviously, I've got a podcast. But whenever it says in John, when it's talking about when Jesus goes before the high priest, well, he's actually standing before Annas, and it says the high priest, and he's being tried. And Jesus, he responds in a way that they don't like. And so a man smacks Jesus on the face and says, will you speak to the high priest that way? And then Jesus responds, never mentions anything about the high priest. But at the very end of that little section, it says, and Annas sent him to the high priest. So it's like, but wait a minute. This said the high priest, and then this said the high priest. So are there two high priests? And you realize, oh no, wait a minute. So Annas was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, and he was helping. In other words, because of my studies and because I've had to really root in and dig deep into these verses and what they actually mean, now when I read the Bible, it's so much more rich to me. And I pick up on those little things that I never really noticed before. It's a beautiful thing.
It's awesome because when you read now, it's like the words are popping off the page, and you're just like, "Oh my God, I see it so clearly!" And
I
it's like
know.
you get that picture, and then you're like in the story, and then you're like, it's just so rich. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
it's so powerful and I love it. So, all right. So I'll say one last time before we come off, endtimes-explain.com. Yes, and that's the book, End Times Explained, Understanding the Different Views.
Or
And the
by
author,
Kirk Cameron.
that's right, written by Pete and Rachael Wrue. You can also get The Return of Christ. I'll do that one for you. The Return of Christ. Why are we still waiting? Yes, written by the
Awesome.
same authors. No foreword in this. I'll write the foreword for your revised edition. I'm just
Aw.
kidding.
There you go.
I'm no Kirk Cameron.
Aw.
Anyway, well, much love to you guys. Thanks for giving me this time. And I'll let you know. We'll do a follow-up after that class, okay?
That would be
Awesome.
wonderful. Again, thanks for having us. We love you. And thanks
Absolutely.
for all you're
Love you
doing.
guys. All
All
right.
right.
Take care.
God bless.
See ya. God
Bye,
bless.
everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye now.